The trip was not planned at all. Until a couple of days ago, life was not fun but still stable. And who knew that her sister and I would have to run away from home, from a stepfather who had gone completely insane and killed our mother. And once, they had been an average American family. They lived in California and enjoyed every new day. Our whole life changed when our father died at a construction site. They didn't know who was responsible for his death. And our mother started drinking a lot. She couldn't handle her new life and responsibilities. She missed paying bills and forgot to buy groceries. As a result, they could sit with absolutely no food and no electricity. She started dating different men. She wouldn't say she liked having them in the house. And Joan, her sister, would tell her not to go out to the bathroom at night and to lock myself in her room well. She was 7 years older than her, and she said she could get out of here soon, and she asked her not to leave her with her mother. The two of us were in her dad's old pickup truck. She kept seeing this creepy picture in her head. Her stepfather yelled at her mother for losing money. Maybe she hadn't lost it but had spent it on alcohol. She was practically unconscious, and he could barely stand on his feet. Her mother said something rude to him, and he hit her. That crunch was so strangely loud, it sounded like it echoed throughout the house. Something broke. Her skull, neck, vertebrae. She didn't know. All that was obvious was that she was dead. She and my sister saw it all, hiding under the stairs, shaking with shock and fear. They waited until he had another drink and fell asleep. Joan grabbed some of our stuff and took the car keys from her mom's bag. There was no money, but there was gas in the car. They drove just straight to get away from there. But where to? Joan said she couldn't drive anymore. She was too tired, and they needed a place to stay for the night. They turned off the main highway and went down a rural, deserted road for a while, and they saw a big house. Oddly enough, it was empty. Joan honked and knocked, but no one came out. And the door, it wasn't locked at all. They looked at each other and went in. Inside, everything looked abandoned. A thick layer of dust covered everything. The furniture looked old, as if it had come from a previous century. They went upstairs to the second floor, and there was a bedroom. It was extraordinary, like in the movies, with a canopy. And on the dresser there was an old picture of a woman with a little girl. Joan said we'd better sleep downstairs. The couch was easier to dust than the slush bed. They shook off the dust, covered ourselves with the things we'd taken from the house, and fell asleep instantly from worry and fatigue. A presence awakened her. When, through sleep, you know someone is watching you. She opened her eyes. Her sister wasn't there. There was no one in the room at all. Where could she have gone in the middle of the night? She had to find her right away. As she walked up the stairs, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Her sister was asleep in the massive bed in the upstairs bedroom. She shook her by the shoulder. She cried out and woke up. What is it? How did she get here? They were both confused. She means she thought she'd decided to lie upstairs by herself. She was dreaming something awful. Joan whispered, "Something worse than our lives?" she said sadly. Though she was scared and anxious. She was dreaming about the woman in the portrait. She was looking for her daughter, saying she would never let her go. What's so creepy about it? She asked her. She doesn't know, Joan said. She had a scary look, and her hands were covered in purple paint, like blood. Good thing it's just a dream. Let's go downstairs and try to get some sleep. They went down the stairs, and down the stairs again, and down the stairs, stairs again. They were silent. It seems as if they were talking about the stairs being suddenly endless, and the nightmare would take on new, frightening shapes. Finally, she couldn't stand it and rushed up instead of down. She was right back in the bedroom. Joan was breathing heavily and afraid to say out loud what they were thinking. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she said only, lie down, you need to rest." She lay down, but couldn't bring herself to close her eyes. Suddenly, she remembered our life before Dad died. They used to go for walks as a family in the park, go rollerblading and eat hamburgers. It seemed so unreal, like an old dream, or someone's perfect life in a movie. She didn't notice how she fell asleep. She dreamt of the girl in the portrait. At first, she was cheerful and playful. There was a man, and she was running towards him and screaming, "Daddy!" They acted like a typical happy family. The woman from the portrait joined in. She brought fruit. It was all so lovely. A summer picnic in the garden. Suddenly a strong wind blew, and the man's silhouette seemed to vanish into thin air. And the woman's face became very angry. Streams of blood ran down the girl's skin, who had not yet stopped laughing happily. "Run!" said the girl, suddenly serious. She jumped up and woke up, her heart pounding in her chest, more scared than I'd ever been in her life. It was as if she could feel that this wasn't a dream, as if all of this had just happened. Her sister was beside me, asleep and twitching slightly in her sleep. She tugged Joan's hand and she woke up immediately. "Shall I go down through the window?" she asked. "Are you crazy? We're going to crash," Joan answered in shock. "But the stairs don't lead down," she whispered. She thought she was dreaming. "Carrie," her sister answered in the same whisper. They began to twist some rope from the canopy and everything else they could get our hands on. They fastened to the dresser one end of this homemade rope, and the other they threw out the window. Her sister began to descend. First, the string crackled suspiciously, but not breaking. "Come on, Carrie, I've got the rope," Joan shouted from below. She stepped on the windowsill and suddenly heard a call behind her. The voices were so familiar. It was Dad and Mom. She needs to go back and get Joan. She looked around. The room was empty and dark. In the corners, it was impossible to see anything. The darkness there was so thick it felt like a living thing. She wanted to go down again and again. She heard a call. She got scared. Her dad and mom aren't there. Can't call her name and rarely call her. These voices don't know her childhood nicknames. They want to deceive her. She was shaking with fear. Her movements became stiff. She couldn't make her move normally. The feeling of being watched from the room's corners was so vivid. She rushed to the window. It seemed to her to miss a little time, and she would have to stay here forever. The darkness in the corner seemed to come alive and stir. She wanted to get down as fast as she could, and the rope was swinging more and more. Joan tried to hold it in place. Halfway down, it snapped, and she flew down screaming. She and her sister woke up on the couch downstairs. "Oh, God, it was just a dream," she exhaled in relief. Yes, just a plan," Joan said nervously and began to gather our things quickly. They drove a couple more streets and stopped outside a small cafe. "She has a couple of dollars for eggs," her sister said. "They haven't eaten anything in a long time. Come on." "Wait," she said. "What were you dreaming about?" "They were climbing out the window and you fell," Joan answered. "How can it be that they had the same dream?" she asked. "She won't know. It's not normal. It doesn't happen. She doesn't even have an explanation." They went into a cafe. The owner of the place didn't have any additional employees. There were not many visitors there. She was good-natured, smiled, and tried to make us talk. "Where did you come from in such a shabby state, girls? Hungry? What can she get you?" "They don't have much money," Joan warned. "You don't need money. Tell her what happened to you." She couldn't stand the tension, and she began to tell him about her stepfather, the horrible house they were staying in, and her mother. All the horror that had tormented her during that time left her with a flood of tears. The cafe owner turned pale and stopped smiling. "You're lucky to be alive," she said. "No one goes into that house. No one has lived there for a long time. Once upon a time a family lived there. Father, mother, and daughter. The father seemed like a good man, but he fell in love and left for another woman. A new pet, a new family, and a child with a young wife. The mother just lost her mind from frustration. She started hurting and hitting her daughter because she resembled her father. She said she would get back at him that way. Sometime later, at night, she threw the girl out of her bedroom window on the second floor. The girl broke her head and died. The mother sat with her corpse, not realizing what she had done, and then, apparently, she discovered and hanged herself upstairs in the same bedroom. No one wanted to buy the house or live in it. It had been standing for a long time and began to deteriorate. And soon, people began to complain that unexpected phenomena were happening there. Voices were heard. If you walk past the house at night, the road starts to take you back to it. And it isn't easy to get away from its gates. Many people had to wait until dawn. The neighborhood children were playing, and they argued about who was not afraid to go in there. First, one girl went and disappeared. Then the others went looking for her, except the boy, Gabe. He was the one who told the parents that the children were in the abandoned house. All the parents and many more people from the neighborhood went looking for her. In the abandoned house, it looked like no one had been there in a long time. Dust everywhere and no trace of it. The missing children were never found. They started calling it the House of Death, and everyone tried to avoid it as much as possible. People from the neighboring street didn't want to live in a scary place anymore, and they all moved away, just abandoning their homes. And she has nowhere to go from here, and she doesn't want to leave her house and cafe. It's good that, on the other hand, there are more streets and residents. Otherwise, I'd be living here all alone, said the woman. The girls were very silent, not knowing what had happened during the night. Dreams or ghosts? Maybe it was some magical place. Then they were fortunate to get out of there. Cameron, the cafe owner, helped the girls get to town, go to the police, and soon return to her house. The girl's stepfather, for a long time, was locked up behind bars. Joan took custody of Carrie, and things came back to relative normalcy. Soon they sold the house and moved to a neighborhood where nothing reminded them of their experiences.